Well, folks, we've reached the end of the year, and honestly, it has been quite the 2022 at the First Mint. We've had a lot of really amazing guests, some fantastic Twitter spaces, some really fun times in the newsletter and on Twitter. And for the last episode of the year, I figured it'd make the most sense to kind of cherry pick some of the most interesting clips and notable clips from some of our brightest guests from this past year to kind of mash that together as a year-end recap. Next week's episode, that comes out on January 2nd, is going to be the first one of the year, and we'll look at the 10 rules for NFTs in 2023. I'm going to have my brother, the real Phil D, join me as a guest. And what's going to be fun about that is we're going to look at the rules from last year, which I made a podcast last year for 10 rules for 2022. We're going to look at those, which ones were pretty big misses, and then also go through mine for 2023. So tune in for that next week. Today's episode, though, is going to go through the best clips. And today's newsletter, if you subscribe to the newsletter, thefirstmint.substack.com, is going to go through the top 10 most listened to or downloaded podcasts, the top 10 most attended Twitter spaces, as well as our most popular tweets of the year, literally based on the data. So make sure you check that out. After the jump, we get the best clips of the year on the First Mint. What's up, everyone? It's LG Doucette, and you're listening to The First Mint, a podcast about Web3, business, and sports. Before we get to the show, a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Evaluate.xyz, a safe and easy way to meet other NFT collectors, negotiate deals, and swap your moments live. Looking to expand your Top Shot, All Day, and Strike collection without spending your Dapper balance? With Evaluate, you can pair up with trading partners in seconds and swap your existing moments for new ones in secure trading lobbies. The fastest and easiest way to trade NFTs. Visit Evaluate.xyz today to start swapping moments with other collectors. Nothing on today's show should be considered financial or trading advice of any kind. Please do your own thorough research and make your own trading decisions. This is not advice. So like we said, today's show is going to be split into 3 sections, each with a few clips from our best and favorite guests of the year. The first section is going to be the cycle of adoption of NFTs. The second one is going to be the fun and exciting possibilities. And the last one will be getting ready for the future. The first person you're going to hear from is Jess, Sloss, the founder of Seed Club, which is a token incubator. He joined us in September to talk about what happened during the last market, as well as balancing the needs of token holders versus that of VCs.
I think what's interesting in these market cycles is like the early parts of the downturn are the ones that I think have the biggest emotional resonance. You start to see the big leg down and then, some false hope and then another big leg down and then some sideways false hope and then another big leg down. And then, it's by the third or fourth one where you're like, okay, well, fuck it. I'm here. Like, this doesn't matter. I'm not even looking at my portfolio anymore. And so I think it probably still goes lower or sideways and it gets deeper and some of the early stage money dries up. And so depending where you are in the ecosystem, like you'll feel the pain in different places, but it's sort of, it's a very reflexive asset class, right? It's either hot or it's cold. And I think the big difference we have now is, there's both so much more money, so much more talent, so much more there in crypto today. Still a ton of way to go. And then, of course, we have the macro headwinds, which I understand you guys have been talking about a bit in recent episodes. Yeah. And so it's just a challenging space for risk assets right now, but that can change. Who knows? I think the biggest difference for builders who I think have been around at some time is that they're just trying to de-risk at every corner, right? Like, we know that we should be prepared to go build for the next 2 or 3 years and not need to go raise any more money. And how do we go, create the conditions that allow us to go and, ensure that we have the capital to continue to build, if you're lucky enough to do it. And if not, then how do you focus on the important things and for the important people that will position you to be in a better place to do that in the future. And so I worry that long term, if you have token holders that you're trying to serve and you have equity owners in your business that you're trying to serve, that at some point those interests diverge. I find it hard to believe that they won't. And I think there's just like a much more pure way to go do this, which means that, unfortunately, you can't really like roll back the clock. So I think it's probably the right move for those folks to do it. And there's a good chance that investing that money in will bring a lot more attention to doodles, and that the doodles price will go up. But for how long? And, I think we're much more bullish on the idea of having everybody, like, what is crypto good for? It's for distributing ownership in networks. Let's lean into that and make sure that people who are early and early collectors, early supporters, backers, workers in these networks are rewarded with ownership and get to see the value that they help create materialize.
Next up is Bianshe, the founder of RumbleKong League, also the former director of marketing for The Sandbox, which is a huge metaverse. He is a gaming executive. He's also a gamer himself, and we dive into what it's going to take for Web3 gaming to actually attract real gamers, what that's going to look like, and honestly, what it takes to make a game that people really enjoy.
One of the key feedbacks that we see or comments that we're seeing is that the gaming audience considers that like NFTs or token or play to earn doesn't add anything to the fun of gaming that they couldn't get from any game that does not have this component, which I think is part of the reason is that the space is we are very early, and it's really just about proof of concepts and seeing hey, this is possible, this is what we could do. But taking Axie as an example, which is a game that I love the team and I'm following them closely. But the question is how many people would play Axie if there would not be the financial incentive for them. Everything that happened last year in the Philippines and the social phenomenon that Axie was, a big part of it was due to the financial incentive. And the gaming audience is really much about gameplay first and having a good time and spending time in a game. And to date, there is not really a game that is gameplay first in the Web3 and in the play-to-earn space. There's a big chunk that is really about incentivizing through financial upside and getting the audience engaged through what is possible to earn tokens, to have play and earn, to have all of this. But if you would just have the pure gameplay perspective, it's either something that the mainstream audience already has seen, or where the level of the quality is not there yet to be considered AAA or anything like this. And from a gaming perspective, you compete for the most valuable resource in the world, which is time. End of the day, you want to have something that people enjoy doing, and they work all day. They just want to switch off and they want to have a good time. And this is where gaming comes in. Of course, you have all those other secondary layers to it, which is around making friends, social interactions, competitiveness. There's of course you can earn money through it, but end of the day, you just want to have a good time and you want to have fun. And it's what you explained. And remember, look back at getting your first NFT or buying your first token. You have to what is MetaMask? Why do I have to go through an exchange? Why do I have to send something from an exchange to my MetaMask? What is gas? Why do I need gas? Why do I have to pay for spending something? And it's still very the barrier of entry is still super high for someone that is not super interested in this from the first place. So why would they want to learn about this if they just want to have a good time? And it's gonna change, and the level of accessibility is gonna improve a lot. And even on our side, we at RumbleKongs, we think on a daily basis how can we if someone having a good time and he logs in and he wants to play the game, which is coming out this year. But how can we then tell him hey, did you know actually you're having a good time? How can we bring him to the next level and say did you know there's Kongs? Did you know there's other NFT collections? There's something that you can play, and there's a completely new layer to it, which they might not be part of, which is the part of any video game. If you play Clash Royale, if you play League of Legends, they're gonna tell you hey, you play the game, you're having a good time. Why not check deeper into what is the meta of this universe? What can you do in the game? And I think there's a lot of games and projects that are doing a tremendous job, and that they're building and look at Illuvium or Star Atlas, and it's a super high level of polishing. But end of the day, it will come down to making a fun game that people enjoy.
The next voice you'll hear is from Jayne Peressini, the former general manager of Top Shot. I think I'm not really sure what's going on there. Hopefully she's doing well and still in the mix somewhere. She has a lot of experience on the tech side. She worked at Reddit and DraftKings and stuff like that. So she's going to talk about the aha moments of Web3, also where Top Shot lives in the lives of its users.
If we look at Web 2, we're still in the MySpace days. I think we're getting into the Facebook and and then the Renaissance happens, and I think we're getting close. I mean, I think Top Shot will have that moment. It hasn't yet, but that's the hope too. Is I think too, once we get more players involved in our platform, and our platform also is multi-sided, where we have players coming in and engaging with fans and engaging with collectors, it feeling like it's very native into the product. So, you're a top, I'll just throw this out. Your top Steph Curry collector. And Steph Curry logs in and he sees his top fans. He's like, hey, I've got a new Under Armour drop coming. I'll throw some shoes at you. You're like, look, cool that you're like, thanks, Steph. Really appreciate that. That's the kind of engagement that, I hope that Top Shot will have on top of the collecting and, the obviously the more the market side of the product. But the PFP, the apes, I think the good thing about crypto winter, and my formative years were in 2008, 2009 in the, no recession. So I kind of remember, in growing up in the Silicon Valley,
a similar mood to right
Airbnbs
now. Is there
going
to say a similar outlook to the current day?
Where does Top Shot live in the lives of our users? Do they live in it when they watch the game? Is it something they do outside of the game? So daily fantasy is easy because you're you set your lineup, you watch the game, you watch how your players, you do it while you're watching the game. Makes sense. For Top Shot, are we a product that's very, very aligned with the NBA and what's going on in the action, or are we more of a platform that has adjacency to the NBA, but it's a platform and ecosystem that doesn't have to live within the sport itself? Very transparently, I also again, this goes back to I don't build for myself. I will build the product. I will support however the community feel however we think is best for the longevity of the product. And this is where we're testing into and trying to figure out. Again, there's no one to model off of. We're the thing. We're not the something of something. Mm-hmm. So we got to figure it out. But I do think those 2 points of people feeling like they're in control of their destiny, and that we're not playing God in it, and then people feeling like there's that. They know where Top Shot fits in their lives. I collect when I do this, or I watch a game and I play Top Shot, or I'm with my friends and, it's gotta be very natural and not something where you're reminding yourself. And and then that gets into people saying I don't want to sit in a queue for 4 hours. I want to live my life. Those are things that are also cues to me being okay, so the Top Shot from a collecting perspective is they don't want to there's a lot of people that are I'm a busy person. I don't want to sit in a queue. But then there's people that are I love the queue. I love waiting. I love waiting for 4 hours. And so there, again, it goes back to you have to remind, okay, what kind of person is saying that they want to wait in a queue? What kind of person is saying they don't want to wait in queue? How do we build a product that can satisfy potentially both types of people that are hardcore collectors that they're the ones that camp out for the latest Jordans, versus the ones that are here's my credit card, run it when I get to the top.
And last for the section of adoption, we have Dave Fedlman, the general manager of NFL All Day, where he talks about a world of sports and Web3 where there's always something to do, and whether sports can properly scale into places like stadiums and tickets.
I mean, I think there'd be a world where there's always something to do. So there's always challenges or a new version of challenges that ideally is tailored to each individual collector. So if we know, and I'm making this up, but I could see a world where it's hey, we know you're a huge Carolina Panthers fan and you typically buy rare moments, so we can create a journey for you where your entire collecting experience is tied to collecting those collectibles, like a Baker Mayfield or a DJ Moore or whatever it might be, and gets you on a path to, wow, if you continue doing that, then wow, you can become a Panther season ticket holder, or we can get you on the field to do the coin toss before their Thursday night football game, or whatever it might be. I don't know, I'm totally riffing here, but I think the beauty of the blockchain and how our product works is we know the behavior of everyone. And so that can be really taken to our advantage. Wow, so you were at the game last night. Here's here's a pack specific for you that just because you're at the game you can get, or maybe you get first dibs on it or whatever it might be. I don't know, but I think there's just so much we can lean into, like the fandom element of it that mirrors your collecting habits that can really make this like an incredibly tailored, customized experience for you that will just only elevate your NFL fandom.
Are we looking at like this tokenized future in 5 or 10 years of like, hey, every sports league has this blockchain division, even like you were saying, like, you know, social media, you went from one league, there's a team of 30, you went to another league, team of 2, right? And you modernized that, and now it's like, yes, like brands must be number one social media. It's very important. Is that in 5 years, are we looking at the same thing for blockchain from sports leagues where it's like, and probably you guys are leading the way with a lot of this, right? You know, you hinted maybe the tickets will be integrated someday. Who knows if that's going to happen? But eventually we all hope that that's going to be real, that it's like, I go to a hockey game, my ticket's an NFT, whether it gives me benefits or not. It's whether it's, you know, just for collector's item or whatever. All that stuff is tokenized. Is that, you know, I buy a jersey, it comes with the NFT of the jersey, something like that. Is that where all sports leagues are going to go? And is that a good thing?
I think there'll be some version of that does happen for sure. Whether like the actual jersey example you gave is the one, but like I think like there just seems the landscape is too ripe for these dots to be connected, for them not to be connected. That like going back to my Panthers example, I have no idea why I keep going. I'm from Detroit. I have no reason why I keep bringing, but for consistency's sake, like there's no reason why there's a day where teams will know who their biggest NFL day collectors are, and they'll know that they're also go to X amount of games a year, and based on their behavior, and they know they buy Y amount of jerseys a year, and that whatever else, you know, whatever other mediums of how fans express their fandom, like this is all out there, and that because of that will enhance their relationship with their collector, where it's like, oh, okay, you now get, you know, it's like the classic like hot dog at the stadium example, like cool, like you get to go to a special tailgate, or you get a seat upgrade, or you just get access that people can't get. Like this isn't going to happen tomorrow, but I definitely foresee a vision where like I would be more surprised if it didn't happen than it did happen in, you know, 2 years, 5 years down the line, whatever the time horizon is. And I think like we've made some inroads, like what Top Shot did at the playoffs last year was crazy, right? I mean, like literally 10 collectors went through every single playoff game. Like there's a lot of playoff games, and we like that's amazing. And I think like that is just like the prelude for I think what can happen down the line as our products mature, as well as like the NFT landscape matures as a whole.
The next section is kind of the possibilities of Web3, because we have to keep in mind we are in a tech sector where there's still a lot that can be done. There's still a lot of innovation to come. We're just not there yet. So the first speaker you're going to hear from is Andrew Steinwold, the head of the ZimaRed podcast. He also runs his own very successful investment firm in the space. We talk about the thoughts on blockchain worlds and what's going to take for them to be more popular, because Andrew honestly thought that they'd be bigger than they actually are, as well as how much the internet has grown and how much it will grow over the next 40 years.
I thought that virtual worlds, blockchain-based virtual worlds would be more popular, even though we are in like the, you know, what I call like the pre-Napster era. Like we don't even have Napster yet, and after that will be like iTunes, and after that will be like Spotify, right? So like we're super early there. Yeah. But I figured that, you know, people are spending most of waking hours staring at screens today. And it's like 7.5 hours for the average American. For Filipinos, who I think are in number one spot in the world, I think they're at like 10 plus hours per day. So we're already spending most of our lives digitally, and I figured, okay, blockchain-based virtual worlds are just like next generation social media. Your piece of land that you buy is kind of like your profile, and you're putting pictures of yourself if you want. You're putting a e-commerce store, like, you know, you're selling NFT shoes or whatever, or you're building a gallery showing off your stuff. And I figured that would be more popular, but I've also learned so much in terms of user experience. Like, users want the easiest experience possible, and walking through a virtual world and looking at things is just harder than looking at a screen. Like if I go on Instagram, I'm getting just the pure information, versus if I'm on, if I'm walking through a virtual world. And that's why I think that wallets, like I think that wallets are the next generation Instagram and Facebook, because I go on to people's OpenSea profiles and I'll kind of scroll through it. Oh, what do they have? You know, what's cool? What's exciting? So I thought that blockchain-based virtual worlds would have taken off in a larger way by now. I do think that they will take off or be more important in the future once we have better VR and AR devices. That's going to take some years because it's more reliant on hardware versus software. Because software can iterate at a pace that's just like unmatched. Hardware is going to take some years. Very bullish still, but it's going to take much longer than I expected. PFPs, I had no idea that PFPs were going to be a thing. And what I've learned about being in this space is that the market is driven by narratives, and you cannot predict those narratives. I think it's nearly impossible to predict unless you are scraping like tons of social information and whatnot. Maybe you could like just tell right before a narrative kind of comes on. But that's a very kind of quantitative process that would require like a ton of work to figure that out. But yeah, I had no idea. Like I even I was telling people about when Apes first came out. They were like, "Oh, what do you think about Apes?" I was like, it's just like another one of these projects. Like, it's just like hash masks, right? I was like really big on hash masks. Yeah. I was it's just like nothing. But they had some incredible marketing on the back end, which really propelled them. Which I didn't even. That was like, even that in hindsight, simple strategy. Get these in the hands of famous people. But back then that was considered like a play that no one even had thought of, right? So the amount of value that's going to be created in the next 40 years is going to make the internet growth look minuscule, right? It's going to absolutely blow everything out of the water that we've seen. And we see this on certain occasions in terms of like, in certain games, certain platforms that really take off. Either, the token goes up a lot because everyone piles in and people are so excited. Or the engagement that we're seeing per game is, orders of multitude higher versus engagement in Web 2 games. Like we're just seeing people are more incentivized to spend more time, money, and effort into their digital lives when they have that sense of ownership. And so that's that's setting up the macro. In terms of why it's going to be the next, the world's biggest market is because, right now it's small. We're talking about arts, we're talking about collectibles, we're talking about video games. It's very, very tiny. And these are all low stakes use cases that are fun, friendly, approachable, and really kind of allowing us to build up this infrastructure for when we put in, or when we bring in like real, quote unquote, real assets, right? Loans, IP, financial contracts, derivative contracts, all sorts of traditional financial assets will be traded on chain as NFTs, because in a lot of instances you get massive efficiency gains for trading assets on chain versus how they're traded today. Like I always use this example. It's kind of overdone, but when I bought my condo in Chicago, I had to go down to the property title office. I had to sign all these papers, handwritten. It was like a huge stack with a pen and paper. And then when it was done, they're like, "Okay, cool. Like you now own your condo, right?" And they're handing me this thing, and I'm like, "That's a process. Like it's 2021, like." And so yeah, like that to me was crazy. And yeah, some cities have gone digital, which is great. But like going digital is one, but having the actual title of that home or of that asset, car or whatever, actually being transferred to LG, and then LG transferring the funds to me. That could be done with way less people, it can be done in minutes versus this process took X amount of weeks and the papers and legal and all that could be baked into a smart contract and just be ultra efficient and I think that would be. I think that's going to happen. It's going to take a very long time. I'd say, at least 20 for stuff like that. It's probably like 10, 20 years. But like it will. Like the efficiency gains you get, if it was like a 1x, 2x improvement, maybe it wouldn't happen for much longer. But we're talking about like no. We are making things way. We're talking about cutting out months and months of work and tons of people that don't actually need to be there and tons of processes that are irrelevant. You're talking about cutting all that down into minutes.
The next person you're going to hear from is Mack Flavelle. He is the CEO and founder of Big Head Club, also the former, co-founder of Dapper Labs. Mack was one of our more popular and interesting guests, and he basically talks about why roadmaps are dumb and also why NFTs are just so incredibly fun.
If there's a coffee mug at a store, and you're like, "Oh, you can buy that coffee mug for $5, I'm like, okay, it's worth $5 to me. Then, if I own that coffee mug, and you're like, "Hey, can I buy that coffee mug from you? I will give you $10. I'm like, "No fucking way. This is my coffee mug." Once you own something, most people become emotionally attached to it in a way that makes everything else about it more fun. Ownership is literally a basis of play. Basically, you can pink slip everything, and that's fun. That's really like, I may or may not like to gamble, and you can't gamble if you're renting everything. Like when we made CryptoKitties, I was playing a lot of Hearthstone, and I stopped buying cards in Hearthstone because it just felt dumb. And I wasn't like getting up on a pedestal and being like, oh man, like if I don't own my digital assets in this Blizzard game, then I fucking quit. Fuck this. There was nothing like that. I was just like, I feel like I'm just lighting money on fire when I'm renting these cards for money, and I don't want to. I want to buy those cards, and then I want to bet you that I'm smarter than you and take your fucking cards or lose mine when I win. There's a lot of fun that comes from actually caring about the outcome. And one way to care about the outcome is to own the thing. So there's like a word for the bias that you have for ownership and for emotional value attached to things that you own when that same thing not owned by you has significantly less emotional value to you. Roadmaps are dumb. Roadmaps are fucking dumb. If the value of the thing that you're bought is tied to a roadmap, and that roadmap does not exist in perpetuity, then the value of the thing that you bought has an expiry date. So, like, if you have a roadmap and it has 100 items on it, then I buy the NFT after 50% of those roadmap items are done. Then in theory, I'm only getting 50% of the value because only 50% of the roadmap is left. But when we are at 98% completed roadmap, then who's going to buy the NFT? Now, if you don't associate the value with the roadmap, is the value for that you subscribe to that NFT is measured in a different method, that could be different. But most people are like, oh, what's the utility? What's the roadmap? Most projects pitch that shit. That's all fucking false god, deeply and truly. That's just going away.
And last for this section is Jasmine Maietta, the CEO and founder of Round 21. Jasmine is a very successful marketing executive. She was the CMO of Under Armour and a lot of other great brands, and Peloton as well. Her brand, Round 21, is kind of bridging the gap between digital and physical, and we talk about what it's going to take for other brands to get in there and do the same thing, brands like McDonald's and Walmart.
So I tell people that the innovation around whether it's token gating or like using a token as access, I call all of that Web3. I'm probably wrong. Like definitions are fluid, I think, in this space. And I call the product, the digital collectible, the digital good, an NFT, which I think we're gonna like, we want that to go away. We think NFT is, sterile and it is just confusing. Like people don't, like when they say MD, that's like technical and this is a human culture. So, I mean, as soon as like, I don't know, a McDonald's or a Walmart have a long-term consistent voice, this will change, right? You need, for brand to stick, for words to stick, you need, what's the word? You need consistency and you need kind of this kind of echo chamber. And the examples I always use are Google and Yahoo. Those are literally goo goo gaga, like they're baby words, but now they have meaning because they stayed with it. Google and Yahoo. But we're sticking with it's a Round 21 Digi product, it's a Round 21 Fizzy product, it's a Digi Fizzy, and then we have Fizzy Plus, which is a physical that comes with an NFT, and we'll see. I think it will be, because I hope it will be from the people up. So brands have typically been, and I said this in another recent conversation, brands have typically been a top down, like this swoosh on your left chest says you're cool because we say it's cool. And that's worked for a generation. And I think I hope our generation now, this generation feels is like, I'm the brand. And I think that's what people are seeing is like, I'm the brand. And today my brand is World of Women because I feel like a badass bitch or whatever. I don't know. Or today my brand is a Bored Ape because we're doing an Ape Fest thing and I'm a part of that. I think when you're asking what does the master brand become, I think what these companies or properties or entities have in front of them in the short to midterm is a wonderful playground to give them options for what they become. So unlike the Nikes and the Coca-Colas, you got put in your beverage, your food, your auto, your sports apparel, footwear, and accessories. These properties are IP led. And when I was at when I was running games at Hasbro, we said Monopoly is a lottery ticket brand. It's a slot machine brand. It's a board game brand. It's a Facebook game brand. It's an apparel brand at Neiman's. And that is IP. And when you have really strong IP, you can actually make it what you want. But the categories are now proliferating because they include digital experiences, digital goods, digi-fizzy goods. And so that's what's fun. But I don't think when you lead with IP, you give yourself choices. When you lead with commodities or products or physical, or you lead with an industry like auto, you start off limited. So I think they're giving themselves a ton of options, which is only the world.
The last section is really about getting ready for the future. So the first person we have is Scott Melker, who's a very well-known trader. He's the CEO and founder of TheWolfofAllStreets, his own brand. And he tells us, the lesson that we already know, that 99% of projects will be worth nothing in a couple years' time, but also takes us through how to organize our portfolio and what to do if you want to trade or kind of passively trade, as well as the premises that have served him well.
I'm very bullish on NFTs for many use cases long term, but like with anything else collectible, 99.9% of it's going to be worth literally nothing. That's just reality. And as you talk about, maybe I would want an NFT of those original cards. I don't, because they don't have the same emotional attachment or legitimate scarcity. It's manufactured scarcity that those cards had by coming out at that actual time.
Got it, yeah.
It's not about winning and losing. It's just about slowly plodding forward and making small gains, and then every once in a while hitting that home run that really makes your portfolio for the year. But as you said, I learned over time, and it took me a very long time and a lot of losses. I think I lost so much that I eventually was just like, this sucks. I need to find a way to not lose if I'm going to continue doing this. I hate losing. What are the steps I need to take to do that? So I think it's very important, the thing that's least talked about is that your life outside of trading is probably more important than your actual trading routine. I think that at crypto, the casino's open 24/7, 365, and burnout is guaranteed if you try to obsessively trade this market. NFT, altcoin, Bitcoin, or otherwise. How much you go to the gym, how much time you spend with your family, how much time you don't look at your phone. Like I have a rule. I do not bring my phone in my bedroom. Mm-hmm. So at night, if I go to turn it in and watch TV or whatever, my phone is gone. So I'm not even paying attention to the market at least, 10, 11 hours a day by the time I've netted all those things. I go play golf. I don't look at my phone if I go to play golf, something like that. As far as the actual trading routine, never do it on your phone. Always have sort of set rules about how you do it. Be sitting at your computer in your workspace. Treat it like a job. There's so many of them I can't begin to tell you, but I think at the end of the day, it's really about detaching, your ego, and realizing that being wrong and losing are completely irrelevant in trading. If you can forgive yourself for being wrong, and by the way, wrong, right, who cares? You're literally looking at a chart or taking a wild guess at what's going to go up or go down. So at the end of the day, it's about managing your risks, small losses and bigger wins. That's all it is. You can take 8 out of 10 losses and still be a profitable trader if your system is good enough, right? And so I think most people get in trouble when they're revenge trading or they refuse to be wrong. You move your stop loss down because you're afraid price is going to bounce at that exact moment. You're emotionally attached to your pudgy penguin or your turned up turtle, and you think it's a part of your life identity as opposed to just some stupid shit that you need to get out of. It's a hot potato. Right? And I think at the end of the day, it's realizing what you're there for, which is to make money. If you're trading, it's to make money. If you're investing, go ahead and get your deep emotional attachment and do whatever you're going to do. But if you're trading, it's just about letting your runners run and cutting your losers really fast and accepting you're wrong as fast as humanly possible and doing it like a robot. My premise that served me very well, that I've shared many, many times, if you're new, and you're not going to go way down that sort of risk curve, or you're not going to do research on 19,000 coins, right, is just invest in the base layers, right? Invest in the layer ones that will benefit from whatever happens in all these sort of more nascent and smaller buckets. If you own Ethereum, Solana, maybe Mack if you're looking for sort of solutions that make these blockchains more scalable, AVAX, Elrond, some people would say Cardano, choose your layer one, doesn't matter, right? if NFTs explode on Solana, you may not own those NFTs, but at least you'll get the benefit of the underlying adoption of that blockchain. If Metaverse explodes on a different chain, or if DeFi explodes on a different chain, you'll get the benefits of those, although much smaller. But at least you'll be invested sort of in the base layers that everything is being built on. So I think that that's a very good place to start if you're new, is just sort of gain exposure to these layer ones. After that, I would say, well, layer ones obviously all kind of suck at scale. I think we've learned that, right? Solana is supposed to be the fastest, greatest thing, and it's like offline, once a month for 5 to 6 hours, something like that. Not ideal. So start focusing on things that offer scaling solutions, ZK rollups, optimistic rollups, Matic, Polygon, basically, things like that, and competitors. Start to think about what Bitcoin crypto market looks like in 5 years or in 10 years and what tools will need to be built to make that happen. Because 99.9% of this stuff that's not building something fundamental is going, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's sort of like the internet boom and bust of the late 90s, early 2000s. It advances the ball, it helps the industry. But if you're just like putting all your money into a project that there's 30 projects trying to solve, and maybe it's not even a problem that needs a blockchain or needs to be solved, you're probably going to end up losing your money. It's really, I think, important to be able to identify those things. But I would just say don't go even far down the risk curve. Don't be like lulled in by 100x gains and things like that, because you're probably not going to hit. You're probably just going to end up a passionate community member who's bag holding, wearing a shitcoin t-shirt, right? And talking about how it's the future, and it never goes.
Materializes. Next up in the section is Tascha from Tascha Labs. She is a PhD in macroeconomics as well as a fantastic content creator. I asked her, honestly, in the summer, how do we know if the bottom is in? And she told us that we should stop thinking about all of this as a specific sector, and helps us define what success will actually look like in Web3.
We probably hit a local bottom somewhere in middle of June, right? So, but do I know how long this bounce is going to last? I don't. So, do I know when we're going to see some bounce like in the bear market? I don't. There are traders who use more like short-term, supply-demand indicators, but that's a totally different framework.
Right.
So in terms of what do people do? I know such a $1 million question is. I think as a investor, the thing about crypto is for many people that I talk to, the really interesting thing about crypto is that because it's like DeFi is like suddenly got so complicated, like right out of the gate, it kind of motivated a lot of people to learn about financial markets through crypto. Like that was like a gateway drug. Mm-hmm. To learn about trading, to learn about investing for many people. Yeah. So I would say instead of trying to see where the market bottom is, use this opportunity to really learn about investing, learn about trading, whether to find an approach that works for you. It's really, I think it's also a journey to know yourself. Your own temperament, it's going to decide what approach works for you. Are you going to be a long-term holder investor, or are you going to be a type that flip NFTs every day? So that requires totally different like personality types. You may do one type of one approach may work well for you. The other approach may not, depending on your personality. But you could be successful in either as long as it fits you. So I would say use this opportunity, use this kind of time slowdown in the bear market as an opportunity to invest more in those knowledge. Figure out a way that works for you, whether it's short-term trading, long-term, medium-term, whatever works well for you. And in terms of market actions, market operations, I think many great investors will tell you that it's really what's the most key is risk management and portfolio management. So you got to learn to manage your risk. Especially in such a volatile market, it really, the market teaches you've got to manage your risk no matter what, right? Whether it's bear market, bull market. And then portfolio, in terms of, how do you see your portfolio? The thing is, I think probably maybe it applies to this audience. I know it applies to many people in the crypto space. I have friends that, live and breathe this space day in and day out. This is the whole world to them, right? And it's a pretty big part of the world for me too. I'm fascinated about the space. That's why I write so much about it. It's very addictive. But the thing is, it is a very, very small piece of pie of the entire investment space. This is like, we are talking about right now it's under $1 trillion market cap. The whole space adding together. NFT even smaller.
Oh yeah.
So yes, so it's a very small space. It's fast growing for sure. So that's why people are fascinated about this, because it, feeds on the whole PM of this is a way to get rich faster. But it's still a very small piece of the entire world of assets that you can invest in. When we stop thinking of this thing as a sector, when there's no longer a group of people that is thinking of themselves as missionaries for crypto, when this question no longer exists because it's just a part of everything we do. It's like today, is there a internet sector, or is just something everybody uses every day? It's something that it's in every sector. Every company has a website. You have to do things online. You have to use the cloud, and every day, probably every hour. So that will be the success to me.
And last on the slate is a community favorite, Space Cowboy, whose handle is actually Top Shot Fun. He is a content creator who wrote a really fantastic blog last spring about the influencers in the space and defining influence and the guidelines we should expect them to follow and that we should also use when deciding who to listen to in the space.
I mean, you're naturally going to be drawn to people that are funny and entertaining. There's a lot of hilarious people out there. And so a lot of it is kind of an entertainment element too. It's really fun collecting NFTs. But if you're looking for someone to actually kind of like follow and pay close attention to their moves and see how they operate, you should look for people that are transparent, that provide educational content, that seem to have a good pure following of people that believe in them and have, they've done right by them. And it takes a lot of time. You'll make mistakes. Everyone's fallible. People will, as long as they apologize. We can't hold people to incredibly high standards just because we're all human. But for the sake of my blog about it, I define it as people that have over 50,000 followers that focus predominantly on NFTs. So their opinions, quite literally can move the market, to your point, whether it's they intentionally pump or dump or not, but people definitely follow their plays and take action based on their tweets.
How did you classify tell me about the different classes of influences in your post? Because we got pure collector, marketer, creator, builder, and hybrid.
Yeah, those are the four categories I kind of place people within. At first, I was going to do it a 3-circle Venn diagram, but then I realized that at the end of the day, everyone's a collector, which is one of the beauties of this space. It's really fun at collecting, no matter who you are. So I made it one big circle where everyone's a collector. Then within that, I have a regular 2-circle Venn diagram where there's marketers on one side and creators and builders on the other. And when I was going through defining people, it was pretty difficult because, I have relationships with some of the people. I'm friendly with them. We follow each other. And there's definitely good people that fall in all categories. But the main point I wanted to get across to maybe mostly beginners is to understand the context with which people are talking. So if you're my majority a marketer, for example, you may be getting paid to tweet what you tweet. You may be getting a percentage cut of the mint costs that people are paying. Whereas if you're a creator or builder and you're working on your own project, you're obviously biased towards that project, but your intentions are a bit more pure, I would say. Not always, but mostly, for the most case. In general, the guidelines should be transparent, so don't have other wallets besides what your public wallet is, and then be upfront with your moves and disclose everything. Like, if, for example, if you are doing an ad, make sure it's disclosed just like the law requires on Instagram. You should put hashtag ad or sponsored, whatever it may be. Tell people transparently upfront if you're getting a cut of the mint project. If you're advising or consulting and you're getting a kickback, that should be known to people before they ape into what you're recommending. And it's tough, too, because in Web3 there's no real, since it's decentralized, there's no one to hold each other accountable besides the community. So I think everyone's kind of naturally incentivized to be a good actor in some sense because their reputation is everything they have. But on the other side, there's a lot of money to be made, and people can do unsavory things for a quick buck. And those are the people we want as a community to get rid of. And so if we act together and make decisions, collectively to root out the negative people, I think that bodes well for everyone going down the future.
And that is going to do it for us today, folks. Again, it was our last podcast of the year, so thank you so much for sticking it out through this horrific bear market that hit us about halfway through 2022. Next week, we have a great episode with the real Phil D, so I wish you a very fantastic end of the year.